Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 288, the Friday edition, the Boy We Have News for You edition. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. Today's May 12th, 2017.
Okay, George, let's give people an update. We're not going to talk about the weather. We have to have something else in our initial intro, and that's going to be how to share Unscripted with your friends and family. Every week, when you see this new episode, it would help us greatly with all the free time we put into this if you could share, like, and subscribe. You're either watching this on YouTube or Facebook or through the email I send out. If you're on YouTube, please click the subscribe button to the channel and like the episode unless you don't like it. If you don't like the episode, please click I don't like it. If you want to comment, you can comment, but we really want you to start sharing this with your friends. A lot of you have been holding in your Anglican Unscripted secret, and we want you to share us. If your friends don't like us, you knew they wouldn't. If your friends love us, we got lucky. It happens. So please do that for us. George, how was your week?
Intensely depressing.
Uh-oh.
Well, Susan and the girls are off to Hawaii the girls for several months, Susan for a month. They're leaving on Tuesday for Honolulu and then Kauai. And I'm here going to take care of my parents and the dog. But that's not why I'm depressed. I love the dog. He and I
Sure.
companions. Buried an 18-year-old girl on Tuesday. And it came home to me how so many of the young rising generation, lower middle class, working class whites, are trapped in alcohol and drugs and narcotics and hopelessness and nihilism. We had the funeral, and the family has only a tangential relationship to the church. They asked if they could have it here, and I said sure. And because I want, our role as the Episcopal Church is to be the community Protestant church in this part of the world. And for instance, when we did the Lord's Prayer, the only people who knew the Lord's Prayer were maybe a handful of older people, myself and the minister, the assistant. And it's not because they were disconnected; they just didn't know. The girl died, and as she was driving with a friend and another boy, and the boy in the back seat, she had her cell phone up. It's called FaceTime, is it, or whatever? Or where you film
Facebook
yourself?
Live.
Facebook Live. She's driving a car, one hand up on the iPhone like that, the other holding up a bottle of booze, and she lost control of the car. She died immediately. The girl was thrown through the windshield and died on the way to the hospital. The boy's paralyzed. And the plague of heroin and methamphetamines and the utter sense of life has got no purpose except for immediate short-term pleasures. Kevin, this country's got a problem, a major, and it's a spiritual problem, really.
Yeah, I mean, for a Christian nation, we kicked out God. And this is the result. Our children have no future. They have no hope. They have no resources. The only thing they know is selfies, some hedonism, and all that does is lead to annihilation. And here in Connecticut, last year we had 2,000 heroin and opioid overdoses that led to death. 2,000 people. That's more than we lost in car accidents. What can I say? It's a whole new world, a whole new paradigm of what we as the Christian church has to deal with, and we're slowly being erased completely from the society because the society doesn't know what's wrong, and they know there's a problem, but as long as the Christians aren't here, they're okay with it.
We're lucky in the South. For some respects, because the residual Christian culture of the past is still very strong. It's not like that in the North. It's not like that in New England. people here sort of, well, I should go to church, but I just don't want to. I don't know where to go. I don't have one. Where up in New England and in the West Coast, that's all gone. The sort of Christian DNA of society has sort of passed away. Here, the family knew that they should do something, and so they reached out to the church. And for the church, that meant the big church on the hill, which happens to be us. And they knew they needed God, and they didn't know how, they didn't know why. But I'm still lucky because I have that cultural boost to get the people to knock on our doors. It's so hard, not just for the Episcopal Church, but the ACNA in places like Connecticut or in Washington State. Um, and and here's my little political point. And what has our government been transfixed about for the past year? Transgender bathrooms.
Yeah, I know. And somehow the press is allowing the government and society to put words in our mouth. Because you're Christian, you believe this. Because you go to church, you believe this. They're not letting us speak for ourselves. And so much and so forth. I don't know if you remember this. When Trump got elected, there were a lot of fake hate crimes. I remember here in the Northeast, graffiti was everywhere, writing on sidewalks. People were receiving hate email at Yale. UConn was defaced by conservative Christians who were celebrating the victory of Trump. And we saw, this happening at churches as well. And I said, wait a minute. Some of these look like fake crimes because of what we call the orgy of evidence. Too much evidence pointing to a single person. And that's just not the way crime works, George.
Kevin, there was one.
And I got in a lot of trouble. Well, okay, kitty cat, stop it. I got in a lot of trouble for saying this looks fake, I don't believe it. Kevin, you're homophobic because you don't believe this. George, I was proven right months later. It's fun to talk about.
Oh, Kevin. And there were two Episcopal cases I recall. One was in suburban Washington, where somebody put KKK sort of stuff on an Episcopal church. And the other was in Bean Blossom, Indiana, where someone wrote Fag Church, Rule Trump, and all this other stuff. And of the two, just knowing nothing, I thought it's highly unlikely that the one in suburban Washington is a legitimate hate crime.
That's just no way.
Kevin, it's more likely that a Chinese Tong is going to drive by my little country church and paint Tong signs on the church than it is for white hillbillies to go into that part of Washington, D.C. and spray paint white power graffiti.
Nope.
Kevin,
Yeah.
it's just not credible. But no, what the police in Indiana, Deputy Fife investigated. And Deputy Fife interviewed the man who reported the crime, who was the church organist. He said he discovered it when he arrived at church on Sunday morning to open up. It's a young man, a gay man, an organist who lives in the university town of Bloomington. And the police officer said, were you at church on Saturday? He said, oh, no, I haven't been here all weekend. Well, folks, if you're going to commit a crime, don't take your cell phone with you. They investigated and they were able to basically place him at the scene of the crime on Saturday by his cell phone.
Oh, you're talking about Indianapolis CSI. Oh, come on, George.
Well, they did, and they re-interviewed the guy, and they said, "Now, have you lost?" I'm assuming, did they say you still have your cell phone? You didn't lose it that weekend? Oh, it was with me all the time. And you weren't at church? No, I wasn't. I was back in college in Bloomington. Well, what was your cell phone doing? In Bean Blossom.
Wait. I remember my cell phone buying spray paint. It's my cell phone who did it. Yeah, okay.
Turns out the kid did it. And not a kid, he's an adult man in his 20s.
So we find out that the criminal did a hate crime, but not a real hate crime.
Right, because he's a gay man, his spraying anti-gay graffiti does not qualify as a hate crime under American law.
Even though he was trying to institute a revolt that for reasons that did not exist.
Well, Kevin, I think the fellow is more clueless. I mean, I just don't see the good farmers of Bean Blossom, Indiana, rising up to overturn the White House because of. But you know, Kevin, these fake incidents, they're so common now that I now have reached the point of not believing them. There's a prominent activist in the Church of England called Jane Ozanne, who claims that somebody threw bricks at her house, therefore it must be a gay hate crime. The dean of the cathedral in Glasgow, after he held the Muslim service, also a gay man, claimed that he received hate email and turned it over to the police. I don't believe this anymore. I
No.
really don't. Simply because
Uh,
the wolf people have cried wolf so often, and almost every one of these that I'm aware of that has been investigated has turned out to be a fraud, where that either didn't happen or it was done like this Indiana incident to paint conservatives in a poor light.
In the 10 years we've done Anglican TV, I've received 3 hate emails from the same person who happened to be a gay activist. Um, I didn't think of them as hate. I just thought of it from as a very disturbed person who had some issues that, I didn't give it to the board of directors. I didn't turn it over to the police. It was just a person who was dealing with a lot of hurt. And, you know, my radar always goes up now when I hear hate crime or I hear graffiti. I live, 3 miles from the Yale campus. Every day there's a protest there for something about something that does not really exist. And that's we talked about the culture that kids are growing up with now in this nation. That's another part. This lie they're being told that they need to be social activists, that that is their future. And that's what they're being raised with in our public schools. That's what they're being raised with in our universities. They're not being taught to be engineers, doctors, nurses, lawyers. They're taught to be activists. And this is the end result. Fake news, fake crimes, and you're now fake hedonist people living on social networks. I've spoken enough now, George. What do you want to say?
Well, if all that you say is happening, it's good for the Episcopal Church because we need a lot more fake Christians to
Yes,
fill in our
let's go for
flagging ranks.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We do need to do a couple updates. Gavin and I already talked about what happened in England last week, but George, what are your thoughts about a bishop secretly consecrated under the dark of night, not in the church, which we initially thought? We don't know where he was consecrated. To me, this seems like Singapore 2003 all over again.
Not really. Singapore, secrecy they had in common. Singapore, it was immediately after the service, they released the photos, and you saw Manuel Collini and Moses Tay and the other bishops consecrating John Rogers and Chuck Murphy at St. Andrew's Cathedral. Here, we still don't know if there was 1 or 3 consecrators. We only know of one, the presiding bishop of the Church of England, South Africa, or it's now called Reach. So there may have only been one bishop performing this consecration. We still don't know where it is. The people involved, David Holloway and Jonathan Pryke, have not responded to questions. They put out a
Well,
statement, but
we got a
they
statement, but when you posted the story that lo and behold, there's been a consecration in England, not conducted by the Church of England, we got a response from them saying our story was incorrect.
but that's all they said,
Yeah,
and that it
what
was
was incorrect
incorrect.
about it?
Well, that's all they said was it's wrong. You got to take it down. And I said, well, what's wrong about it? Did it not happen? And they said, and they the next day they wrote back saying, well, it didn't happen on the premises of the church itself. So the who, what, when, where, why, we had all right except the where we had stated it took place at this building when it took place actually in a place unknown, still unknown.
Okay, geez, this is not
And
very
that was
helpful. But
subsequently reported in follow-up issues.
uh
But is this a good thing or bad thing? Actually, I think it's a good thing. Now, it's counterintuitive well, wait, wouldn't this cause the fragmentation of the conservative movement? Well, Jesmond was going to do what Jesmond was going to do. They're all in the back of the beyond in the northeast of England. They've always been independent. They're friends with the Sisa people. They were going to move to their own tune, and this is actually a good thing because it's now causing the thoughtful conservatives, Anglo-Catholic evangelicals, whatever branch of the church, say, look, unless we are together, we're going to have a dozen Jesmond consecrations. So I believe this is actually for the best because it is going to focus very clearly the minds of the leaders of the conservative movement in the Church of England.
It does tell the
Otherwise,
people.
it just fractured
Yeah.
to make pieces.
It tells the people of England it can be done. Just like, EMEA showed us, listen, this can be a path forward. EMEA had their consecration in Singapore, and lo and behold, the conservatives here in America said, if things get really bad, separation from the Episcopal Church may be a way forward for us. Well, lo and behold, we had Catherine Jefferts Schori. It became the only way forward. And I think, I just want to finish my thought here. This is kind of a spark that may lead to an ace burning fire on the shores of England.
I lived in England for a number of years, and one of the things I discovered is England is not America.
No.
It's not America. And even though we speak the same language, we're divided. Very much different. For instance, I can dress like this and be an evangelical in the Episcopal Church of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the pictures of the conferences they hold in Leeds, they're all white men wearing flannel shirts. Nobody's got a tie on, let alone a clergy collar. You look at the pictures from the Forward in Faith Congress, they all are men, few women, but they've all dressed in black with not this type collar, but the little thin, slip-ons.
Yep.
In other words, and then you've got other conferences where everybody's in a coat and tie, and that silly sort of visual just shows you the spread. I can't imagine right now the guys in the black suits with the little Catholic shirt collar tabs and the guys in the flannel shirts sitting down to the same conference. But that's what's going to happen to ensure that you don't split apart and fade into irrelevance. And that's what Bob Duncan was able to achieve with the ACNA. Mm-hmm. You've got the Forward in Faith Diocese all the way out to the Todd Hunter flannel shirt guys. They're all part of one church, and they're working together very well so far.
Yeah, I think this is the time that hopefully a Bob Duncan type character will step up and start gathering the kittens of England so that they can have a future. Another thing we need to follow up on, we talked a couple weeks ago about Truro and all that was going on there. Any follow-up?
Yes, we reached out and contacted John Guernsey's office, and he said that Bishop Guernsey and Tory Balcom, the rector of Truro, met this week, I believe on Tuesday, and had a full, frank discussion of the issues, and things are going well.
Well, hold on. Did Tory say things are going well, or no? It's all right. Keep that in your prayer.
Bishop Guernsey's office said things. That we should have a. I did not get a 50 lines of that so and so and such and such.
Sure.
But I didn't get any indication of what well meant.
Well, like I said, we do want to keep that in our prayers. This can be a great time for the church and the ACNA. George, I want to thank you. We're about to run over time here, but any plans for Mother's Day?
Giving out 200 carnations to people.
I know, Incarnation Sunday. Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. We're going to do some stuff special for my wife, and I've already sent a couple plants to my mom. Victoria came back from Pittsburgh for a Mother's Day weekend, so it should be a lot of fun. I'll bring everybody up to speed on Monday. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Congert, and you've been watching episode 288 of Anglican Unscripted.